The past is the past. We only can work with what we have right now, but we've been saying that for a week right now. I've got to ask, who is in charge at the White House other than the president? We hear Jared is in charge at the White House. Why do we still not have tests? We keep getting promised 1 million tests here, 1 million tests there. Yesterday we heard reports from a health official that we don't have a lot of the supplies that are needed to apply the test. Who's in charge? Because I'll guarantee you that I could give you 10 business people that could be in charge of this that would literally say, get me a test in a week, go. And even if it were a little longer than a week, they would be on war footing, like FDR. He basically sent Detroit to war, and Detroit helped win the war. What's happening in this White House? Why are we still hearing this BS about ventilators when it's just BS? Why are we hearing BS about testing just around the corner when it's always proving to be BS? When is somebody going to finally be in charge and get these tests to the people of Ohio who need it, to the people of Florida who need it, to the people of Arizona who need it, to the people of New York and California who need it, to the people of Nebraska who need it?
Well, I think there are a few things at play here, Joe. First of all, the White House was simply slow to react, and the president is engaging in revisionist history here. We know that he spent weeks downplaying this crisis, in part because
right, but what are we doing now? What are we doing now is my question. Who's in charge? If they can't do it, they need to bring somebody in who can do it. Who is in charge? Who can tell us truthfully how many ventilators we have ready to go? Who can tell us truthfully when every American who wants a test can get a test? Because we keep hearing nobody in Ohio can get a test.
All right, well, part of the problem...
Nobody in Ohio. That's ridiculous. Who's in charge?
That's part of the problem, is there's uncertainty as to who is in charge, because the Jared Kushner team, which has been sort of working behind the scenes on this, at times is at odds with the task force headed up by Vice President Pence. There has been some rivalry there. There's been confusion among other government agencies who they should be dealing with. There's been some confusion in the private sector as to who they should be dealing with. And as we hit home earlier, the president invoked this Defense Act yesterday in order to marshal the private sector for this effort, but yet later sort of walked it back somewhat. I mean, it is...
And can you explain that, Jonathan? Can you explain that? What's the inside of that? He invokes the Defense Act, but then later says, well, you know what, I'm not going to use it right now.
Well, even when he invoked it, when he said he was going to invoke it from the White House, he said, well, if we need it, if things get bad enough. It clearly is.
We need it.
We need it. And he signed it. He did invoke it last night. He signed it last night. So it is in place. But he tries to have it both ways, where he's suggesting, I'm a wartime president. He's saying that we're doing all that we can. But at the same time, he's still minimizing the impact of what's happening here. This is an attempt for him to be perhaps too cute by half, where he's saying we need to do these things, but he's also still trying to broadcast to the American public things aren't that bad. And I think also we need to too much has been made of the last few days about his shifting tone. Yes, has he been more somber in the White House briefing room? He has. That should have happened weeks ago. He is still.
That's right.
Much has been made about he's using the phrase Chinese virus to describe this, even though many have described it as racist. Yesterday, he didn't even back off the idea when one White House reporter said that a White House official told her, he called it the Kung flu. And the president wasn't upset by that, another deeply offensive term. And I think that... Go ahead, Mika.
These are the terms that the president at this point is putting out there, and I wouldn't get distracted. We're looking for facts on people who might be dying of the coronavirus at this point.
And by the way, that's a good point, Mika. That's just
it's terrible.
Let me give liberals and progressives and people in the media a tip here. He's poking at you. He wants you to become outraged.
To react to racism.
So you'll talk about that instead of talking about tests. So you'll talk about that instead of talking about ventilators. It's called a rabbit trail, and yes, it's offensive, but again, we can talk about this in November when the election's in full force, but this is all a distraction.
So we're now closing in.